Here is your Lesson 3-6 summary. Let's do it. Valuable experience in this lesson, is the point of the lesson, context-wise, was exchange rates. And that's something useful to know a little bit about if you ever plan on doing any traveling outside of the United States. Now, even if you've never done that, or even if you never thought of it, there's a pretty good chance that at some point you'll want to do that at some point in your life. So an understanding of how exchange rates work and how items can cost dramatically different things in different countries and different regions is certainly worth knowing a little bit about. Key ideas, the mathematical key idea in this lesson is understanding direct variation. This is a dramatic oversimplification, but in its most basic form, we say that two things vary directly. If one goes up, the other one does as well. Now, there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the mental picture I want you to have. One goes up, the other does too. The more technical thing says, if one goes up, the other goes up by the same factor. But that's just kind of the way that the idea of direct variation gets used outside of our classroom, our virtual classroom, I guess, is thinking of the idea that two quantities are vary directly or are in direct proportion. One of them goes up, the other goes up by the same factor. The other key idea is modeling with direct variation. We learned about the algebraic structure of direct variation, that two quantities x and y vary directly if y equals kx. But this is another one of those times where you can memorize the formula and you can solve an equation, but unless you can use that to model something real, then you're missing the point of why we're covering direct variation in this class. So being able to take a verbal description that leads you to believe the two things vary directly and turn that into an algebraic model, that's the second key idea in the lesson. And the third is to think about the connection between direct variation and proportion. There's a good reason why saying that two things vary directly is often described instead as two things are in direct proportion. So we saw that if two quantities vary directly, then we can use direct variation equations to solve problems involving them, but we can also set up and solve proportions involving them. And anytime you have more than one way to solve a particular type of problem, that's always a good thing. If you are building stuff, if you're a home improvement person, having more possible tools and more possible materials to solve a certain problem is certainly something that you would prefer rather than less. And so if we learn multiple approaches to solve similar problems, then that increases our problem solving ability, and that's a good thing.